The plan is I'll go on teaching as if nothing is happening, and you go on responding as if nothing is happening. So it should look like she is already tensed. I feel so it should happen like it's a course. I have my slides. Today is the course on emerging market, and we will discuss about emerging market. Then, as it's written in the syllabus, we will have 3 or 4 cases. I don't know if we'll have the time, but one is on China, one is on India, and 2 are on Latin America. This is what I think was in the syllabus. So, but I thought that since there are no readings, we will just speak about what are emerging markets, why emerging markets are different, and how we do business in emerging markets. So, the first question is basically what are emerging markets? So, what would you think would be some of the factors that define emerging markets? Yeah, high growth. Anything else? Yes.
Country which is quite underdeveloped.
So, mostly underdeveloping, probably. Yeah. Means high GDP growth.
Yeah.
So, high growth which leads to high GDP.
More employment opportunities.
Are you sure?
I mean, if there is high growth, then kind of people are.
Yes, so that is a cause, means that is an effect to the cause. But what would be a definition of emerging market? That means that most emerging markets would have this characteristics. So these are generalizable characteristics. Yeah.
Increasing middle class access into consumption.
Increasing middle class. Okay. Yeah.
Maybe also a certain degree of stability.
For
example, with regard to corruption and that stuff.
Stability regards to corruption.
For example.
Okay, so stability, instability or stability?
Stability.
Stability.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Economy based more on resources or manufacturing as opposed to service.
Manufacturing, which might go to sourcing, you said? No, manufacturing vis-a-vis services. Yes, services, and here resources are more important to go to services. Yes? Countries that attract foreign investment, this is the cause of the effect. So, high growth causes countries, people to. Anything else that might be interesting? Yes, Kami?
Usually you have a lot of work power.
Manpower? Manpower, that means more people. And more manpower. That means these countries have population as one of their main factors of influence. Anything else? Interestingly, all the things that you have said are true, but these are not the definition. Why? Because the definition is based on facts which can be replicable. So, this guy Tarun Khanna and Krishna Palepu defines emerging market as follows. Usually there is information asymmetry, which means that the rich and the poor, they have different informations. That is why rich gets richer and poor gets poorer. Second is misguided regulations, political goals, which is of course everywhere in the world, but in these specific markets the political goals are misguided for a few, which means that few people can attract resources because of misguided political roles. Third is inefficient judicial system, which means that all these countries would have judicial system, but this would be misguided, which means that some people can take advantage of those, some people cannot. For example, in India there was a company called Enron which do not exist today. So Enron opened in Mumbai near Maharashtra, in Maharashtra, power plant, and when the government changed, they found that the power plant is supplying power at higher cost than the local power plant. So the government questioned why is this so, and the government thought that this is not to be done, and since this is not to be done, the government said we stop business. So Enron, being a global company, said if you stop business, then we have invested so many millions of dollars in the country, so how do we take out this money? The government said, okay, go to the court. And in India, most optimistically, it requires around 20 years to solve an issue. 20 years. So this is one issue which is called inefficient judicial system. For example, in China, there is another part of inefficient judicial system where there is an example of this company McDonald. So McDonald in Beijing had a store, their premier store, in front of the Forbidden City, and then Li Ka-shing, who is very powerful in Hong Kong and who has very good friends in the Politburo of China, wanted that space for his hotel, for his office space. So McDonald said, we are a multinational company, we have signed the contract and we are in this place, so we wouldn't move. So they went to the court, and of course what would the court say? In China, the court would say that yes, there is a contract, but the government is the real owner of the place, so the government can tell you to leave whenever they want, and so they had to leave. And today if you visit Beijing, you will see Li Ka-shing's whole space with office space and Hyatt just in front of the Forbidden City. So this is misguided regulation, which is lengthy, cause of market failure, and lack of proper IPR rules, which is intellectual property right, and difficult and different labor laws. An interesting point is why different labor laws or difficult labor laws? Because these countries which we are speaking about do not have usually any social security system. So if you are fired or if you do not have a job, there is no way that you can earn money. For example, in India there is no social security system, in China very minor social security system, in Brazil, anyone from Brazil? Not no one, but again very limited social security system, and this makes labor laws very difficult, so that you can difficult to hire and also difficult to fire. So when you have this setup, it is difficult in terms of emerging markets. Having set the stage, there was a report of BRIC. Have you read the report, so that I can go a little first? It was first came out in 1993. So BRIC is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and Goldman Sachs got this report out where they said that over the next 50 years these countries would be a much larger force in the world of economy. If this goes right, in less than 40 years the BRIC, so all these 4 countries would overtake the G6 countries. There is an issue about why G6 and why not G7, but Goldman Sachs thought that G6 would be better, and they said that by 2025 they could account for half the size of G6, which is just around the corner, another 15 years, which means that all these countries, the BRIC countries, would overtake the G6. And lastly, the shift in GDP related to the G6 take place steadily over the time, but most dramatic is in the first 30 years, which means that the first 10 years is already done. So the next 20 years will be more dramatic than the first 30 years. And why is this so? Because the countries China and India might have, which they perceive or which they think, they might have a GDP which is equivalent or equal to that of the developed nations. So I will do a small calculation for you. Probably you can understand why they say this and why this is so. difficult to absorb. So, what would be population of India today?
1.2 billion.
So, India is 1.2 billion, China 1.3 billion. And what would be 1 billion equal to how many million? 1000 million. What would be India's per capita income today?
36,000.
Around $1,500. What would be China's per capita today? 3,000. So, when you are young, you had a formula like this: amount is equal to principal into 1 plus r by t, no, r by do you remember this formula? So, what is the growth of India and China? Around 8 to 9%. Okay. So, I have 2a, I have a 1 plus 8 to 9% over time. So, what is t? 30? 30? That means it will double in 30 years? No. Usually money doubles in 14 years. No, money doubles in 5 years if it is 14% interest. So, you keep the 100 euro in the bank, or 100 rupees or $100, it becomes 200 in 5 years if it has 14% compound interest. And here we are talking about 8 to 9%. So, let us say time is equal to around 8 years. So, in how many years? So, what is the average GDP of developed nations? Around $30,000. So, when will 1500 become 30,000 and 3000 become 30,000? Oh, no. Sorry? You have to calculate. 3000 in 8 years become 6000. In 16 years become 12. In another 8 years, 24 years become 24. Another 8 years, 32 years become 48, too much. So, 24 and half, let us say. So, how many years? This one? 36? 8? Only 8 more. So, in 36 years, $2.6 billion people would earn this much money, which means what? This is how much money compared to France. What is the population?
65 million.
Germany, whole of Europe,
500 something.
what is the growth rate? 2. It's around 1% average. So, 50 will become how much? 55 maximum into, now you are 30, at that age, at that point probably 50 if growth happens. So, this is 1/4 or 1/5. So, So, whole of Europe would have this amount of money, and India would have 1.3 billion, probably it will be more than 1.3 billion, and China will be more per 1.3 billion, and this will be the scenario. So, why they are saying that? Because they are saying that the largest economies in the world may be longer the richest, higher growth may lead to higher returns and increased demand for capital, and rising incomes may also see these economies move through a sweet spot. For example, this year the largest number of millionaires is already in Asia. So, US and Europe have been already surpassed. As today's advanced economies become a shrinking part of the world economy, the accompanying shifts in spending could provide significant growth opportunities, and that is why we only talk about emerging markets today. Why? One way to understand this is because the growth is here. And in Lafarge, what did we say? We said, how is value created? You did the Lafarge case, right? So, how is value created? Profit plus, the CEO said, into. So, the multiplication or the addition is basically what creates the value. So, if you have, that is what I think we have forgotten probably, but if you are a very big company, if you are a very large company and you have no growth, what will happen to that company? Large company, no growth. Large company, no growth. What will you do with that company? What will happen? Yes, competition, go ahead, what will happen? There will be takeover. Why? Because it is not growing, but it is large. So, someone might want to take it over and do something else with that company. If you are very small and very good, what will happen? Also, you will be acquired. So, the question is, how do you manage this together is what we saw in Lafarge, which means that the growth was an imperative. If you do not grow, someone will acquire. If you stay stagnant and you are small and very good, someone will acquire. So, the only way to have is both. So, that is what they are saying is, with the shrinking part of the world economy, most of the companies would try to find sweet spots, which are small companies or big companies in this part of the world, because the growth is happening here and not in the old economy. So, what will happen is, this is how it looks like. What they said is, this is China overtaking these countries. So, China has already overtaken UK, already overtaken Germany. This year they overtook Japan. This is 2015 and we are today at 2010. So, already it is going so fast. That means what they projected is now behind, which means that it is growing faster. So, India would overtake Italy, would overtake France, would overtake Germany, would overtake Japan within this area. If you see our target is India 36 years. So, 2010 plus 36 is around 2046, but this they told in 1993. So, 7 years have gone by. I think, can you see? Okay. You see, if there are cameras, such a quiet class, it's nice, no? You don't have to say stop speaking, everyone is attentive, it's good. Okay. So, what is happening? So, 2015 already 10 years, already means 5 years before, and for India will cross Japan in 2032. So, basically already it is 5 years ahead of time. So, basically it will be within this it will be 2025. So, another projection would be larger GDP when together 2025 BRIC economies will be half by 2040. So, we said 28 plus 10, today is 2010 plus 28 is 2038. So, they are projecting 2040. And if you see the largest economies in 2050, which is what we predict for India, 36 plus 10, 46, is first is China, then in the US, and then in India. This is what BRIC analyzed and spoke about after much research, which was one of the highest downloaded report in the history of Goldman Sachs. So this is India and this is China, the red one, and India is the green one. Also some projections in China, what takes the G6 around 2030, that is what we say, 28 plus 10 around 30, but of course there is if the growth is at 9%, it will create more and more energy for growth within the time period, and India would be around 2040 or 2044, that is 36 plus 10, 36 plus 7 years, which is 2040. And if you see India's rapid growth potential is here, whereas this is China and that is India, but India is far lesser than China because China started the liberalization policy when? But this is an important concept, liberalization. What is liberalization? Opening of the economy. So China started in 1970? Yes, 70s, but 78. And India started 1991. So China is around 12 to 13 years ahead of India in liberalization. So what does liberalization mean? Opening up. What does opening up mean? Allowing foreign direct investment to come in different sectors. When this happens, how countries get richer? Someone said something a little bit before about you said about industrialization and about manufacturing versus services. So usually what happens is the growth story happens in a country is agriculture. First people are interested in agriculture, and then there is an industrial revolution. So they start manufacturing, and when they have manufactured much, they move from manufacturing to services. For let's say for the UK, why UK do not have any manufacturing companies anymore? All have been sold. And what UK main industry in UK is today? Finance and banking. Main industry in most developed nations, for example Japan, of course they have manufacturing, but again it would be like, let's say 45 35 10 or 45 35 20 would be the ratio of agriculture, would be a ratio of services, manufacturing and agriculture. So as a crude example, assuming that China's GDP growth continued to grow at 8%, so they have targeted 8%, but today China is more than 9% continuously. Next 3 decades would lead to prediction that China's economy would be 3 times larger than the US in US dollar terms. And if Japan, if you see in 1960 and 70, Japan was growing at this stage. In 70 and 80, 5%, 80 to 94%, and 90 to 2000, stagnation. And this is a discussion that no one has able to solve. Many people have given many theories why Japan is stagnating. It's called stagflation, which means that there is less of inflation, there is some inflation, but it's stagnant. Huge amount of reserves, but they cannot utilize the reserves to increase money. An interesting point here. If you have money in the, let's say if you have plenty of gold ornaments in your locker, what does it mean for the economy? Very good. So you are keeping money out of the flow. So if you have plenty of money, cash in your vault, what does it mean? It means it's outside the economy. It is called black money. Why it's called black money? One way to understand that is it is not counted for in the economy. Now that is called high velocity money, which means that the more money circulates, it's economics, microeconomics. The more money circulates, the larger it becomes. So for Japan it's a big issue because they have huge amount. What is the amount? 13 trillion I think. 13 trillion yen in the post office only. And then similar amount in the bank. But they don't know where to invest. They can invest abroad, but this money is not generating any funds. And this is a big question which many economists, social scientists have tried to argue, that why Japan is not growing at the rate that it should have grown before. So one precursor to this question is can China and India become like Japan? So some people who do not want China and India to become this would like to say they can also stop. Some people would also say that there will be fourth World War or third World War. Fourth is little late, third World War, and this could not happen. Some people would say that okay, because both China and India more so, this economy is around 30% is in agriculture. So it depends on the rainfall. So if there is too much of rainfall, what will happen? Floods. If there is less rainfall, drought. So again the economy will not grow at the percentage that we want them to grow, which is at 8 to 9%. So these are all the issues that they have already taken into account and said that these are the assumptions of the model. And of course, there is a big issue of labor force, which means that where will the people who will work in the next generation will come from. So if you see everyone is declining. Brazil is declining, Russia is declining, only India is less declining than the rest. Why is China also declining? Anyone? One child policy for so long, which means that they have controlled by some way, which is an autocratic way of growth. So this is China and this is India. So India is also declining, but at a much lesser rate. Whereas projected population growth rate, this is China and this is India. So India will have more population than China in the next 10 to 20 years. So the rationale for emerging markets, which means that there is a market potential. I won't go into the details of this graph, but there is a market potential and there is country risk, and of course companies would like to understand this together to say why they would like to go in this market. So the bigger the circle, the bigger it is lucrative for a company to go, and this is only for companies which are food, drink and tobacco business. But if you see, also rational for emerging market would be it has time for around 2 years to break even, also more than 5 years to achieve return on investment, and also more than 2 years to have significant EBITDA before they can come out. So which means that these markets are not so easy as we think when we think that this to do business in. Following that, what some companies would like to do or some companies did before is having a scope or having a way to identify emerging markets as business parameters, which means that all emerging markets are the same. That is why the BRIC report. Why they should have a BRIC report? They should have a Brazil report, Russia report, India report, China report. And within India there is so much of diversity. Within China there is so much of diversity. But we group them into emerging markets, and some companies thought and did mistakes. So what are those mistakes? How not to grow in emerging market, which means that you should never do that today in emerging market. One, sell old products, because with internet anyone can know which product is in the market. So if you try to sell old products, they will discard you, or they will say that you are thinking that this market is not important for you than other markets. Sell existing products with reduced functionality, which means that you are trying to cash on cost. But there could be people, as we said in our emerging market definition, that there might be people who can afford this amount of money, but you don't know. Accept a lower product quality, which means that you launch a Mercedes S-Class 350 series here, and then you send to India, let's say Mercedes S-Class 10 series. So people would say, why is this so? Use old product technology to develop local products, which is again people would question, because these markets are becoming more and more important, and ignore major differences between and within emerging market countries, which we just said. An interesting story. In a small city in India, in the north part of the country called Aurangabad. Aurangabad is in the middle. And then in the western part there's a city called Ahmedabad. So Mercedes and BMW are now very focused in markets like India and China. So there are small and medium sized enterprises who have now huge amount of money, So, one day I do not know why it came out in the news that in Aurangabad 100 small and medium sized business guys came together. They usually are in a club, they usually go out to play golf together, but they are competitors anyways. But they all came together and said that we would buy 100 cars, the top range Mercedes or BMW, and which company is going to give me 20% discount. So, what you are the international manager in India, right, and you have an opportunity of selling the latest brand 100 units at one go. So, what will you do? And it is the latest model, it is not the previous model. Yes, Camille.
It might not be a good move, and I don't know if it's usual for car companies to get to give such a discount to
No.
people.
It's not usual.
It's bad for the brand image.
Yes, everything.
So once that price is established, then it will be difficult for them to go back to the original price.
But I want to sell 100. So, what would you do? So, you say no, right? In Norway, what would you do?
You would probably not sell.
In Germany,
You wouldn't sell? Yeah.
not sell. In the US, you don't know. In Japan, in France, give some gifts, but do not reduce the price. So, exactly BMW said no, we can't give this discount. Mercedes said yes, and they sold 100. Those who bought Mercedes, when they wanted to pay, they couldn't pay because the Mercedes system wouldn't take a 20% discount, because they have never had a 20% discount in the history. After Aurangabad, Ahmedabad did the same thing. Again 100 people, 100 small and medium sized enterprises asked for one day discount. BMW said not possible. Mercedes said what? Yes, again sold 100. Yesterday search BMW in India or Mercedes in India. Today no one is having their computers open. It's a good sign. But if you search yesterday in another city, I think I don't remember the city, but it's probably Aurangabad, BMW sold 100 at 20% discount. In one go, what would you, how many units will you sell in a country at a range of 100,000 euros per unit? How many?
A year
A year. When you go for your consulting interview, this is a question, how many telephone booths are there in Paris? So, how do you analyze that? How many telephone booths are there in Paris?
You think like in terms of arrondissement?
Okay, so how many arrondissements you have? 20. In one arrondissement, you take an assumption, how many street corners are there? So, you go on taking assumptions, and assumptions might be wrong, but at least you can come to a number. But if I say how many telephone booths, so how do I answer, right? So, here also you take assumption. What do you think in a country?
Which country?
India. Because it's 100,000, right? It's a huge amount of money. 5,000 cars. So, this is your homework for next day. Just check how many units are sold in a country. In Singapore, how many units are sold? In Paris, how many? Just a figure, and you can come to that figure. For example, in France, you can come to that figure. Let's say how many Renault, Peugeot and Citroën are sold in France. How do you come to that figure?
That's the number of years you use your car.
So, 10 years your car gets obsolete. And then how many people have, Camille said we have 65 million people. How many people, what percentage of people have cars in France? 90%, right? Yes, 80 to 90% people. So, 80% of, let's say average, 80% of 65 million would be 50 million. So, if it is 50 million And what is the age profile of this 50 million? Population growth is less than 1% or 1%. So, this is mainly around the age of 40, 44. So, that means they have already used 10 years. So, how many? 3-4 million cars?
If you have 33 or 34 million people.
So, but it is family. So, divide by 3 or 4. So, 10 million. So, this is how we calculate. I am just giving you an indication. So, if you see 100 is probably 6 months sale. So, maximum you will sell 300 units in this category, and you can sell in one day 100. So, this is a new model that has business which has come up in this year. No one understood this model before. So, it requires a dedicated approach. So, if you are an international manager, it is very difficult to understand this and to take a decision. But once others have taken a decision, you want to jump on the bandwagon, and that is why dedicated approach is needed. For example, global product, if you have a product, you can sell it at without any local adaptation, which is the high end market. Global product adapted to local needs, mid segment, same volume potential, you can sell. Global product which has innovations launched in emerging markets, which is a potential market coverage, for example, decorative light bulbs, again you can sell. And local market product, total market coverage, like a mixer grinder, like small utensils, you can sell. But these are to be adapted for the local market. For example, Philips tried to sell mixer grinder in India. Do you think the mixer grinder that you sell in Europe would be suitable for India? No. Why no? First, you don't need the same thing, then you use it every day. In Europe, do you use mixer grinder every day? No. In India, they use every day. So, it has to be much hardy, it has to be much more power, it has to be durable, it has to be adaptable. And this, which companies, when they find, probably they have to think and innovate and produce that for that market. Why they have to produce for that market? How many people would buy mixer grinder in India? Number. Everyone means
1 billion.
So, I have to take an India class now. India is a poor country. 35% of the population is below the, today 25% is below the poverty line, which means that they cannot eat one meal a day, which means that 250 million you do not count. After that, there is a family which is around another 100, 150, 200 million, and then 300 million would be middle class, and then 100 million would be the upper class, and then the super rich would be 10 million or 15 million. So, you are talking about a 300 million market. So, compared to Europe, 300 million means most of continental Europe. So, if you are not investing in that market with new products, where will you invest? So, EMs are new market space, and it is very important that one thinks about this market space as a new market space and invest there. So, some challenges, opportunities, identifications, build, plan and execute, resourcing and staffing, managing synergies, and priority setting is very important when you do something on emerging market. Of course, need for different governance models are required, because there is a difference between, we talked about this before. Which case did we talk about? Conflict, headquarter versus subsidiary? KFC, very good. So, EM requires again co-creation, which is a discussion between the company and the people who would like to buy that. A very interesting slide by Boston Consulting Group in India. If you see which is the youngest country in the world, South Africa. Which is the oldest? Japan. After that is Germany, UK, France. So, going by this, there are 350 million citizens which are under age of 15. So, if you want to have products made for them, made for this population, which is the market? If you want to make products which are for senior citizens, which is your market? If you want to make products for the young, which is the market? So, this is what they try to analyze. And also they try to analyze where is the population which can travel and which is excess population which can work. So, this is the model which they have come up. It is the potential workforce surplus is calculated in the ratio of working population age group between 15 and 59 to the total population. India will have around 47 million people in the working age population by 2020 compared to today, while France will have a deficit of 3 billion. So, all these are minus. So, and all the yellows are just about okay for them to manage. So, if you have this, why is China minus 10? We said this before, because of single child. And in 2020, after 2020, so logically Boston Consulting India thinks that these people would move to different countries because you have no people who will work in those countries. Of course, this means that the work means not high tech, of course it means some people will do that, but of course they mean that the lower rung category of workers will be from this type of countries. Yes?
Why is it so low for the US?
Why is it so low for the US? Minus 17. US is a country which has the highest, probably the highest number of immigrants, and immigration policies are very liberal. Why? Because of this. Japan, yes. In France, what is the cap on immigration? There is a cap. You cannot come to Japan, you cannot come to France to work just like that. They control immigration. In Japan, the most difficult. You can't have first 2 passports. You cannot marry a Japanese just to change passports. You can have only one type of visa, which means that there is an interesting story. The first time I went to Japan in 2003, I was in a party. Did I tell you this story? I was in a ESSEC party where they invited a lot of ESSEC friends, and a guy came and asked me, are you a cook or an IT professional? In 2003, for Japanese people, Indians meant either a cook or IT professional. So, this time I asked the same question, that do you think I am a cook or an IT? No, you are from IIT. Because now with more discussion, they know some terminology like IITs, like IIMs, that they can be engineers from India, because it's a very close country. And it is difficult country, different country, entirely different from the rest of the world. So, very low immigration, very low. So, it is minus 9 million. And the more the age, the difficult it becomes for Japanese people. So, I think I stop here and we take a break, and then we come back and talk about the cases that we have, the 4 cases we will do.